Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Realacc Real5 budget 5-inch copter from Banggood. Now, before I go any further, I just want to state that pretty much every component on this model is either a copy or a clone or inspired by another product that is out there, and if you don't want to support that, then this model definitely isn't for you. On the other hand, I know that there are people out there who are just getting into the hobby that can't afford to spend £100 on a frame when there is this copter that is under £100 for the entire thing. And if you are crashing a lot as well, I don't think you want to be breaking, you know, £100 frame when you start out, so I think that's why a lot of people go for these cheap models. Now, this guy looks very similar to the FuryBee X215 from GearBest, and I know a lot of people don't like to buy into GearBest because they don't like their service and they don't like the shipping times, so maybe this is an option for you. I will say though that I think the X215 has got more features than this one. I think there have been some compromises to get the price down. You see, the X215 comes with a receiver, and this one doesn't. You have to add your own, so you know you've got some spending to do there already. And I think the biggest compromise with this copter is the flight controller. This is the Revo F4, and it is a branch of the CC3D flight controller, which is quite old, but it's very cheap. I can't help but think they could have spent maybe £4 more on the flight controller, because the Revo does not have an on-screen display. It's come flash with Betaflight, and the latest version, well, I think 3.3, but we are missing that on-screen display, and I think for an extra £4, I think that would have made this one much more attractive to everyone. It also does not have a buzzer or a LED board. You can add a buzzer. There are some pins here, and they are pins that you can feed through, so you can get one of these little tiny buzzers on here and just reshape it a bit and solder it direct. So I'm going to be doing that. Otherwise, I'm not going to know when my battery is getting too low. We have no on-screen display, so for me, this is a must for this model. Otherwise, you'll have to set a timer and just sort of guess when you are ruining your battery. There are some components on this though that seem pretty nice. I like the motors. They are a 2206 2600 kV, so they should scream if that kV number is correct. The ESCs are D-Shot 600 capable. It was already set up for that. They are a 4-in-1 30 amp. They are flash with BL S 16.6, so if you want to do your turtle mode or D-Shot commands, whatever, you would have to upgrade it to 16.7, but it does support that. Then above here we have got a switching VTX. It switches from 25mW to 200mW to 600mW. It's also a 48 channel. We have a single button here. It's using a MMCX connector, which is a nice hefty connector, and that comes to a RPSMA connector at the back there, which is quite nice. The VTX does not have any instructions with it whatsoever. I think it's a copy of a VTX called the AndyRC, and I think it's called the VT5804 Pro. It might be that one with the sticker removed. However, when I looked at the channel chart, it didn't match up to this one. So to change the channel, it is a 5-second press, and then you can go through your channels. You've got a set of LEDs for the channels, and then another 5-second press to go through your bands, and then another 5-second press, and then you can go through your 3 different power outputs, and then you've got a red LED here which tells you that. The camera at the front is a CCD camera, and as you can see, it's connected directly to the VTX, so there's no connection to the flight controller whatsoever. And it's using a 2.8mm lens, so a very narrow lens. I always struggle to fly with those, but you can unscrew it and put a different lens in. So I guess that would be another modification to do. However, if this is a genuine CCD camera, then the camera will be better than the one in the X215, which is a fairly rubbish CMOS camera that doesn't change very well to lighting conditions. The frame is an unusual one as well. It looks like a GEP frame, but it is slightly different. You can see we've got this huge gap there, and that is because these arms are individual arms. It's not a unibody. And we've got this really thin plate here which is sandwiching the arms together. I'm not too sure how this is going to fare in a crash, but you can see that it's all connected to this big metal piece here, so there's no play or movement whatsoever. But yeah, I thought it was a strange setup there. I've added a silicon battery mat, but there's no real place to do that. You are given these battery straps that do have grip on them, but yeah, I can see this slinging a battery. They give you another sandwich plate with some more 3M silicon on there as well, but all that's going to do is just force your battery into these screws there. So yeah, I've tried to put a bit of silicon on there to stop that from happening. It looks like 4mm carbon, and it's a fairly heavy model. I think with the props on there, it comes in at 344 grams. That's with a connector on here as well. So, you know, it's not a light model by any means, but yeah, with these motors, if they are genuinely that kV, then it should be a pretty nice performer. Now, it pretty much had no setup on Betaflight. I think it just had angle mode in there randomly, so I've done a full setup on it. Of course, there's no on-screen display to set up, so that's one less thing, but it just has stock Betaflight PIDs stock rates. It does have motor stop turned off, but it doesn't have anything like air mode, dynamic filters, anti-gravity put in. So yeah, pretty much a full setup in Betaflight for this guy. You are given a pagoda antenna to screw on the back, but I don't like pagoda, so I'll probably be using this. It is just my personal preference. I get better reception out of these Aomway cloverleaf antennas. I already mentioned the sandwich plate that you get. There's some foam in there as well, just extra weight. We have got some extra screws, which is always a nice touch. We have got some cable ties, which I'm going to need because I'm going to have to add a receiver. So I'm going to add this old X4R SB because I can just plug this straight in there. So yeah, servo connector on the end there. And I can also use these cable ties to strap down this braiding here as well, because it is a little bit loose, but not a big deal. You're given 2 of these Realacc straps. However, you cannot really use them for a GoPro because you would stick your GoPro on the top here and these straps will not fit through there. I've got some of these Azure straps, so those just about fit through, but I thought a bit of an oversight there. Otherwise, your GoPro is going to be back here and, you know, you don't really want that. We have got the directional nuts for the motors. We have got a couple of carbon fiber spanners, and you are given absolutely loads of these props. They are a 5x4x3, and you are given 4 sets of those with a couple of spares, so lots of props at least. So I'll have to see if these props are any good. Okay, so a quick update. I installed the buzzer through the holes and soldered it up, and when I plugged the battery in, I was getting a constant sound from it, which is usually an indication that the polarity is marked up wrong on the board, or the traces are wrong. So I desoldered it and soldered it in the reverse. Of course, I can no longer use the holes because there's solder in there, which isn't ideal because if that snaps off, it's going to lift the pads up. Anyways, that still didn't work. And it turns out that this flight controller has the wrong firmware on there, and you have to upload the Airbot F4 firmware to get the buzzer to work. So I have soldered it back on the right way round, and now the buzzer is working and the VBAT is working, but a little bit of a pain to get that up and running. Okay, let's see what this chap goes like. This is the maiden. So just sticking it in angle mode just to see that everything flies okay, and it seems to be. Hovering on maybe 25% throttle. Let's take it out in the field to try a punch. Yeah, those motors scream just as I suspected, with them being 2600 kV. Wow, yeah. So, definitely going to have the power, that's for sure. So let's see what acro mode is like. It's upsetting dogs with the noise. That's when you can tell when it's noisy. So this is just stock Beta Flight tune. And line of sight seems to be okay. But you know, this is a heavier model and the stock Beta Flight tune does favour a heavier model running a GoPro. So the tune shouldn't be too bad on it. It's behaving alright. But yeah, a little bit antisocial with the noise there. Let's check out how loud it actually is on full punch. Yeah. Quite deafening, but something I've always liked is high revving motors. I like high revving cars as well, and bikes. Well, you know, despite this being a budget flight controller, seems to be performing okay. Actually, it has got an isolated IMU, and I couldn't actually find a complete schematic of this particular FC. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But yeah, came flashed with Revo firmware. Needed Airbot firmware, very unusual I thought. But yeah, it's past the line of sight. So I'm just gonna flick it back into angle, see if we've got any drift. And I'll bring it in for a landing before I annoy any more animals. Okay, let's have a go at this guy doing FPV. I'm using a Tattoo R-Line 4S. Seeing just a little ripple of noise on the picture. It's very windy here today. Decided to go without a GoPro so I can do a throttle run to see what it's like. There's only a few of those I can do though with the noise of this thing, although I think the wind might blow a lot of the noise away from everywhere. Let's have a look what the tuner's like, but it is just stock Beta Flight. There's no movement on the eye gain, so there's a little tiny bit, but nothing too bad. It's feeling a little bit twitchy. Let's try hesitation. It's actually not bad at all. Yeah, pretty snappy. Let's try the roll. That was my hand that gave us a bit of bounce back there. So I think the roll's okay as well. Man, this thing is loud and powerful. Or maybe it just sounds powerful. Yeah, there's definitely a bit of movement. I think it's actually on the camera, you know. The camera is actually quite difficult to screw down because it's plastic. So I didn't know how far I could screw the screws in. So I think the tiny vibrations I'm seeing is the camera moving up and down. And I'm completely in the blind here because I've got no on-screen display. I do have voltage set up on the beeper, but as this is a high C battery, it's pretty much just gonna die instantly. So yeah, completely in the dark when it comes to my battery, but I could set a timer, of course, which I haven't done. That would have been the smart thing to do. Now, it does say on the website that it comes with an Omnibus F4, so I don't know if this is an early version that I've got and they're planning to sell it with an Omnibus F4. They really should, because those have got built-in on-screen displays, and that's the thing that this is missing. Yeah, of course you could add one. Yeah, definitely a bit of shaking on the camera there, but nothing too bad. Yeah, this could have been a perfect machine, but I think the lack of on-screen display is going to put a lot of people off. These days it's kind of expected. But in general, you know, for a cheap model, yeah, it's got the performance. I wouldn't advise this on being your first model though. Once again, start off with a cheap toy, brushed, not going to do any damage, because this will definitely do some damage. But for how it flies, you see there, just a little tiny bit of vibration on the camera. It is a CCD camera for sure, and the field of view is pretty nice actually. But considering I don't know what my battery voltage is, I'm not getting any beeps, but you know, who knows at this point. I'll come in for a landing, and I'll stick a link in the description. And please donate to Patreon if you find my content useful and enjoyable. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.